Careers Talk series. So we're really pleased to be starting this series as part of an initiative to engage more closely with practitioners in various industries, and basically, to learn more about the industries that some of you will be diving into once you leave the protective haven of the university and leap into the big wide world. I see very disturbingly some transcripts happening on the side here. It's a little bit, can you all see the transcript happening?
No.
Oh, it's just for me. Okay. It's a bit strange to be speaking and seeing the text immediately. Okay, so today, yes, Sarah, you have your hand up? No, it's okay. You have a very first question, Ros, before the talk begins. Now, isn't that promising?
I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to share the link with everyone in my class so they can come.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah, that's great, Sarah. Okay. So yes, we can definitely we can certainly expect some practical insights today from our guest speaker, Rosalind Chua, who will be talking to us about a topic I know many of you are deeply interested in, especially the creative writing folks, and that's publishing. So this is your chance to hear about how publishing works and also, how to get your writing published. Ros, as she's also known by, I'm not sure which you prefer, Rosalind, Ros. I'm just used to Ros. Yeah, Ros. Okay, Ros. So Ros will be sharing with us her impressive journey through 25 years in the industry. So we're definitely very lucky to be having her here with us today. I've actually known Ros for quite some time, but at a distance. So she actually attended the launch of my first book, Wildlife on Coal Island in Penang, over 10 years ago. And we've recently reconnected, and it's been great. Okay, so to give you an idea of Ros's background, let me share her bio with you, and then we'll invite Ros to give her talk. Just to let you know, Ros will speak for 30 to 35 minutes, after which you'll have the opportunity to ask her questions. Okay, so who is Rosalind Chua? Rosalind is the founder and publisher at Clarity Publishing, an independent publishing house based in Malaysia, with a focus on commercial nonfiction and upmarket fiction by Malaysian authors. She is a history graduate from the University of Durham, UK, and after graduation in 1997, she spent 7 years in London working with various publishing companies, including Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, Amber Books, Helen Exley Gift Books, and Random House. In 2003, Rosalind returned to Malaysia, where she worked in advertising and magazine publishing before setting up Clarity Publishing in 2007. She's also the author of, wait for it, 12 nonfiction titles and an illustrated children's book, Twee and the Mysterious Howl. So welcome, Rosalind. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Shivani. That is such a generous and lovely introduction. I feel I don't need to do anything now. I can just sort of fade into the background. Goodbye, everybody. No, jokes aside, I was just thinking about this talk and sort of the takeaways that hopefully I will impart to you. And I think the first one is basically, I think when I was your age, well, when I was in university, in my second and third year, I was completely clueless. So I just want to say, it doesn't matter if you don't really have an idea of what it is you're going to get into after you graduate. You will turn out okay. Well, I think I managed to turn out okay, so that remains to be seen anyway. The other thing that I would like to sort of share with you is that publishing is really it's a very wonderful and sort of very varied industry, and one where you will definitely meet some interesting people. And finally, the third takeaway is really that it is actually very, very straightforward to get published in Malaysia. So if there are, any budding novelists out there, you guys really, really, got to get writing and submit your stuff. So I think we can move on to the next slide, Shivani. Basically, this is just, a very quick, a quick synopsis of what Shivani ran through, except there's a nice little picture of my children's book in the right-hand corner. We can have the next slide. I always say that my career in publishing was accidental because in my final year at university, I really had my heart set on journalism. I've always enjoyed writing, and I used to freelance when I was in Malaysia for the NST. So I thought journalism would be something I would do, but I didn't realize that to join like Reuters or AP as a sort of graduate trainee, you needed to have languages. And shame of shame, I actually got a U for my O-level Malay, and U is ungradable. So that was my career sort of up in smoke. Shivani, I think you have to provide a laugh track. It's quite strange having silence. So every time I say something funny, or if it's not that funny, maybe someone could go, ha ha. No, I'm just, okay, so so why publishing? I mean, I think my next love after journalism was always books. So I thought, oh, okay, hey, this, this sounds like this might be something that I could try out. And I also had this sort of, I suppose it's a bit of a misguided perception of a career in publishing. I thought I would meet all these amazing, sexy intellectuals because I thought then, that's what people in publishing were like. I would get loads of free books and free booze, and best of all, I would never have to wear a suit. And all I can tell you is that, maybe I got 3 out of the 4 right, because I can assure you I never met any sexy intellectuals in publishing, but that's fine. This is life. You meet you meet lots of interesting people, some in every sort of industry. Some are very interesting, some are not so interesting. And I think people always have this perception of people who work in publishing are somehow more interesting, and I can assure you they're not. But I can also assure you that, yes, I did get plenty of free books, and yes, we always used to bunk off on Fridays to the pub for lunch, and we never had to wear a suit except during business meetings, and of course when we went to book fairs. There's a bit of text that's hiding under a bar, Shivani. What does it say? You can't scroll up.
It says finding a job and working for peanuts.
Yes. I thought this is such a sad memory of my first job in publishing. I can still remember my salary. It was £12,500, and that's not £12,500 a month. That's £12,500 a year for a fresh grad. And what makes it so tragic is that 25 years later, when I sort of went back and looked at what starting salaries are like in London, in the UK for publishing, it's only gone up a few £1,000s to £16,500. And it makes you think, in 25 years, how and why does this still happen? And the simple answer is that there is huge demand, there's huge supply, and there's very limited demand. Publishing, and in fact, all of the creative industries in the UK are still very heavily oversubscribed. You have X number of jobs, and every year you have more and more graduates that are trying to squeeze through what's becoming a very, very narrow door. And that sort of keeps salaries very, very low. So in some way, it's a little depressing to hear, but on another, I can tell you, once you're in publishing, once you're in the industry, once you have that experience, you're pretty much in for life, because I'm sure it's something that you would enjoy and continue. Can we have the next slide, please? When I first started out again, I had it in my mind. Of course, the only job in publishing was that of being an editor. That was all I knew. And I think that's what all of my colleagues were familiar, sorry, my batch of my intake were also familiar with. That's all we knew, publishing equals editor. We had no idea of all the sort of steps and all the other departments, all the other sectors in publishing that sort of come together to turn words into a book. So of course you have, what we call the creatives, which is the editorial department, design, who create, obviously they design books, book covers. We have production that oversee the print, what the physical book actually looks like. sales and marketing, PR, international rights, and then you have the operational side, as you would have in any other company, accounts, legal, and all that sort of thing. So, you know, it's actually there is just so much to take in. And, you know, today I'm probably just going to touch on the very few bits and pieces here and there that I was involved in. So for 7 years, oh, we can have the next slide. For 7 years, basically, I worked in international rights. Now, how I fell into this was again an accident, because I sort of turned up at the recruitment agency. Again, getting in publishing is pretty tough. I think it's still pretty tough. You know, you send out CVs to hundreds of publishing companies. You don't hear from anyone. So what a lot of fresh graduates and myself do is we join specialist recruitment companies that recruit specifically for the publishing industry. So of course I walked in there and said, yes, I would love to be an editorial assistant. What jobs do you have for me? And they sort of looked through my CV and they said, you're from Malaysia. So, you know, you have some international flavor, and I bet you have languages. And I was like, oh, yes, of course. And they said, well, have you given international rights a thought? Is this something that you might be interested in doing? And I was like, I had no idea what on earth they were talking about, because remember, again, I was just thinking, editor, words, that's something I want to do. So I remember the agent saying, no, you know, international rights is basically, it's business development on an international scale. What you will be doing is working with publishers around the world and basically trying to persuade them, you know, to translate your books into their language. And it's perfect for someone with languages, someone who is comfortable working in an international setting, and someone who enjoys travel. And the moment they said travel, I was like, bing, yes, sign me up, sign me up. So that was really how I sort of ended up in international rights. I started off at a company called Harcourt Brace, which is a very big American, at that time, it was one of the biggest STEM publishers. It's gone through so many takeovers and iterations. I have no idea what it's called now. I just remember I was there for about 9 months before I joined a much smaller company called Amber Books. And there were only 15 of us in the company, 15 of us. And I think we managed to churn out about 70 to 80 new titles every year. And it was an incredible learning experience being in that company, because I didn't just sell rights. Because there were only 15 of us, we all had to sort of muck in and do lots of different things. I remember I'd always have to help out the editors. I would have to write jacket copy for the backs of the books. I'd have to go to the shops and buy vodka for my boss, but don't tell anyone that. You know, this is one of the joys of working with a much smaller company. You learn so very much. So I was there for about 2.5 years before moving to Helen Exley. And that was another sort of smallish company, about the same number of staff, but I think we churned out about the same number of books as well, give or take. And then the final company that I joined was Transworld Publishers, which is what the big T is for. And quite sad, they actually got bought over by Penguin Random House a few years ago. Now, I am sure I don't have to tell you guys how huge Penguin Random House are. And it was just a completely different experience working in a company like that. I mean, from sort of having to do everything like photocopying, fixing the bloody photocopier when it broke down, to sitting in an office by myself, you know, on some days thinking, oh, I don't have much to do. Maybe I'll just go online for the next 5 hours or so. You know, it's a very different experience. And I'm not saying that working in a huge company is going to be boring. I'm just saying that I think when I started out, I really benefited from working in a much smaller company, where I was able to sort of ask lots of questions, sort of, what's the word? To capo a bit, you know, it's like, oh, what are you doing? Do you need a hand? Can I learn what you're doing, basically, which is something that you might not really access in a much, much bigger corporate structure. So next slide, please. So I had been in the UK for a total of 10 years. I was there for my university, then I was there working for 7 years. So I was like, oh my God, I've been away from Malaysia for so long. And to be honest, I felt very homesick. And I thought, you know, now's the time to come home. If I don't come back to Malaysia, you know, I'll probably end up in the UK for the rest of my life. And that wasn't really a very attractive prospect. So thinking about publishing in Malaysia back then in 2003, I mean, this is a totally different time from what it is now. I mean, I feel that the local scene now, it's so vibrant, it's so exciting. You have so many independent publishers. Everyone is, you know, I don't know, I think they've just made books so sexy and there's so much discussion about books, etc. And I think social media has helped a lot in that respect as well. I mean, if I take you back to 2003, you have to remember, I think the only social media back then was MySpace. And it would be years, your eyes sort of, it would be many, many years before Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram sort of popped up. So, okay, so I came back to Malaysia and I thought, you know, it's okay. I don't need to work in publishing anymore because I wanted to come back to Penang. I didn't want to live in KL. I didn't want to work in KL. So I thought, okay, my options are limited. That's fine. I worked in publishing in the UK. I can do something different. And I'm going to sort of condense this part of the journey because it's quite long. So basically, I ended up working in advertising. I was a copywriter. I was head of creative. And that sort of led me back into publishing sort of via a very backdoor route when a lot of clients would say, oh, Ros, could you write a book for me? I'm like, yeah, sure. And from writing a book for a client, it would become like, oh, but we don't have anyone to design or print it. Could you do this as well? And I was like, sure. So it became contract publishing. I ended up sort of working on a lot of accounts for corporates and institutions that wanted coffee table books or books. And I was able to leave advertising and set up my own company called Clarity Publishing. And that is really what we focused on, contract publishing. We never published any books under our own Clarity imprint. We just published books for others. So basically, we did all the fun part, you know, we got to do all the creative stuff. And at the end of the day, we deliver the printed books to them and say, okay, that's your business now, we're done. And that was a lot of fun. And I thought that's how it would continue, because I'm sure I don't need to tell you, it is a tough industry, especially in Malaysia, to get into. So it's really back in 2012 when opportunity knocked. I have this picture of these kids on a bicycle. I don't know if you guys remember, but this sort of became this huge street art sensation in Penang 10 years ago. And because of these murals that this Lithuanian chap called Ernest Zakharevich did, tourists were just pouring into Penang just to snap pictures of this mural. It was very interesting. And I happened to be very, very good friends with his business manager at the time. And she said to me, Ros, we really think we should do a book and we'd like you to publish it. And of course, I said no. I just thought, you know, no way, no thank you. I just did not want to get involved in selling and marketing a book from scratch. I mean, we were a very small company. It's just me, my business partner, and depending on the project, we take on other team members like editors, photographers, artists, other designers. But having to sort of sell and market and distribute a book in Malaysia was a totally different ball game. So I was like, maybe not. But this business manager was so persistent. She was like, Ros, you got to do it. You've got to do it. So in the end, I'm like, okay, you know, just get rid of her. I will do it. I will do it. That book became quite a sensation. We sold, I mean, they said hundreds of thousands of copies, but that's not true. My mouth slipped. We sold thousands and thousands of copies. So, and that sort of led to the next book, which led to the next book, which led to the next book. So I think all I needed was that that sort of push out of my comfort zone. So that sort of triggered off a whole load of other, what did we do? We did commercial nonfiction to begin with, because in Malaysia, it's so much easier to sell nonfiction. People love learning things. People love the idea of knowledge being in the book and reading books for knowledge, not for pleasure. No. So it's like, okay, we can do this. Could I have the next slide, please, Shivani? So this is like a little example of some of our nonfiction authors that we worked with. The first one, Boonsri Somchit, it was a leadership book we published. She used to be the ex-CEO of AMD in Malaysia, and her leadership book was so well received here because she really wrote from a very Asian, a very local perspective. When I think if you go into any bookstore and you look at leadership books, everything is imported. It's all by these US gurus, you know, and it's like, it is just not relatable to a Malaysian workplace. Then we have a personality like Pearly Key, who's a really famous Nonya chef. The two books that we published for her actually won Gourmand Awards. Gourmand Awards are like, I guess they're like the Oscars of the food world. And so this is what we were doing. And it was only a few years ago, I think 3 or 4 years ago, and I thought maybe it's time to do fiction. And I said maybe, because again, I was very reluctant to jump into fiction in Malaysia, because I think publishing English language fiction in Malaysia is just asking for trouble. Not only are you competing with local publishers, but you're competing with the big guys from the US and the UK. And let's face it, I think a lot of local readers, when they go into bookstores looking for English language books, they're like, let's see what's on the New York Times bestseller list. You know, no one cares about what's on the, you know, like MPH's local bestseller list or The Edge or whatever. It's like, no, we want to see the Times top 10, etc., etc. So it's like, it's a bit demoralizing, but, you know, never mind. Let's take this as a challenge. So in the next slide, these are just some of the fiction that we have published. We started off with Cold East. Now, I know you're thinking Gabia is a very un-Malaysian name, but to be fair to her, she's like an honorary Malaysian, and she wrote this book after 7 years living in Malaysia. And a lot of the story is sort of inspired by actual events that took place in Malaysia. Her book has won numerous awards in Lithuania, where it was published in Lithuanian, in Malaysia as well, and it was shortlisted for the EU Prize for Literature. And Shivani told me that yesterday you had the delight of meeting William. This is going to be his second book that we're publishing later this year, Kings of Chinatown. We have this lovely lady, Vijay Krishnamurthy. We published her first book last year, 912 Batu Road, and that was, you know, that was an amazing experience for a first-time writer, and I think it really captured people's imagination. And last year, we were also very lucky to sign up Surya Tay, who is a Man Asia Shortlist nominee. Unspoken is actually her first title. It's her first non-fiction title. And it's a very personal book for her because it documents the mental illness that she suffered. And we thought it was a really good time to bring it out last year just because of, you know, what was going on with COVID. I think we were all struggling in some way with mental health issues. So, you know, there you go. So this is really just a bit of, you know, what I do. So what I'm going to go through next is sort of the juicy bits about how to get published, how to go about it, you know, and just things to look out for and things to try and avoid. Now, this is a really simple chart that's more relevant for getting published in the UK and the US. So basically, you know, the author writes a book, the author then submits it to a literary agent. The literary agent is like a gatekeeper, and these are the people who are going to assess your manuscript and decide, you know, if this is good enough to push to a publisher. a commissioning editor who will then make the decision to yes, take your book, or no. So this is the structure, and this is what typically happens in the US and the UK. It doesn't really happen in Malaysia because I don't think we have literary agents. I mean, aside from myself and maybe a few other colleagues, but we'll talk about that later. And so it's actually a very direct, process if you're an author in Malaysia. You just need to find out which publishers are interested in whatever genre it is that you write about. Go to their website, see how they want you to submit, follow the instructions, and there you go, Bob's your uncle. Why is it so complex in the US and the UK? It's purely because of the sheer volume of manuscripts that agents and publishers are going to receive. And publishers do not want to be sifting through thousands of manuscripts every week, I can assure you. Just to put the numbers into a bit of perspective, for a company like Clarity Publishing, which is very, very tiny, as I would like to point out, we would get on average maybe 20 to 25 manuscripts a year. Okay, 20 to 25. That's really kacang putih. That's something that I can do. I can read all these manuscripts myself. It's not a big deal. Now, a big literary agent in London is probably going to get a few hundred manuscripts over the course of the weekend on the Monday morning. So some poor soul is going to be at the copier or whatever, you know, and they're going to come in with boxes and boxes and boxes of manuscripts and dump them on this agent's desk. And this is not, I mean, that's fine, that's the agent's job, but this is not what editors want to be doing. They just want the cherry-picked stuff. They don't want to have to go through what's called a slush pile and sort of pick out stuff, which is why the job of the agent, the relationship between the agent and the editor and the author is so, so important. I mean, agents really have to know what they're doing. They have to know who they're dealing with, what their writers are like, you know, the sort of personality of each editor as well, in order to make that match. You know, it's a bit like it is like being a matchmaker. I suppose that's the best way to put it. So can we have the next slide, please? Right. What do agents like? I mean, the first thing is really about getting the basics right. So, okay, we've been through this, that in Malaysia, there are no agents. You don't have to worry about this. But if you're pitching to an agent in the UK, there is this resource known as the Writers and Artists Yearbook. It comes out every year, and it's a really thick catalog. It's probably available online as well. And it lists every single agent in the UK, the genres that they're looking for, their contact details, what it is, how it is that they want you to submit. So, you know, going through this, you can read, okay, let's say I write literary fiction. I would just look at the editors that are interested in literary fiction, and maybe I would try and narrow it down to maybe agents that have published books by authors who I aspire to be or to write like, or I believe that I write like. So you need to do a bit of research and find the right agent in order to pitch to the right agent. And the next simple thing is attaching the right files. You'll be so surprised, you know, there'll be instructions like, just send the first 3 chapters of your manuscript, and people will send the entire bloody manuscript. And what happens then? It just goes right into the bin, because in the mind of an agent who is reading hundreds and hundreds of letters every week, it's like, if you can't even follow simple instructions, you know, there's really no hope. So the relationship stops there. Everything goes straight into the bin. And simple things like, has your manuscript been proofread properly? Has your cover letter been proofread properly? Cover letters are so, so important. And if we're going to have like grammatical mistakes, typos, and, you know, just silly nonsense in the letters, it's, yes, it's disaster. So this is just the basics. What agents really like to see in cover letters as well is whether their writers have a good idea of their target audience / market. And I suppose the best way to think about it is to explain in writing in your letter who you think the ideal reader is for your book. For instance, I told you about the management book that we published called When the Chicken Dies, Everyone Cries. So maybe the author's pitch letter could go along something the lines of, I'm an ex-CEO in the tech industry with 20 years experience, and I think my book would really speak to upper to C-level management who are looking to inspire their troops, blah, blah, blah. You know, something along those lines. It shows that you've got some business ideas for your book, which you can, you know, also bounce off the agents at a later date. And there's text covering this. What does the next one say, Shivani?
Personality, an X factor that comes through in your cover.
Oh no, the one above that.
Or do you have a good idea of your writing style?
Writing style, okay. This is another one. Because the first thing that an agent is going to read is your cover letter. In many instances, they're not even going to pick up your manuscript and read it. They're just going to see what they need to see in that cover letter. So, which is why it needs to be so well thought through and so sort of planned. So if you can say, my writing style is a bit like, I don't know, J.K. Rowling meets Shivani Sivagurunathan, they'll be like, I know exactly what you mean. They get an idea of it and it's like, bing, okay, yes, I'm interested. I might read your manuscript. Or no, okay, maybe not, but maybe I have a colleague I might pass this on to. So again, these are also, it's also very important to think about that. I know some people feel uncomfortable comparing their work to other writers, you know, to more famous writers, but I think this is something that you have to develop thick skin in a way, because you are trying to push yourself and your book, and there's no point being shy and basically trying to hiding your light behind a bushel. Which brings me to the final thing, which is your personality. And this is how you translate your personality into writing. And this is really the X factor that is something that really cannot be taught. It's very difficult. And it's the sort of thing as an agent or as an editor, when you read it, you're like, oh yeah, this person has it, or oh no, this person does not have it. And the people that do not have it tend to start their letters with Dear Sir or Madam, which is like, what? Dear Sir or Madam, it's just so impersonal. I mean, for goodness sakes, do a teeny tiny bit of research and find out who it is that you actually want to get your letter/manuscript in front of. And I think this brings us nicely to the next slide about what agents do not like. So basically, it's opposite of everything I spoke about in the first list, which is like sloppiness. You know, lots of typos in your cover letter, not thinking about what your book is going to, who your book is going to be directed to, you know, just very generic cover letters. As I said, the sort of Dear Sir or Madam type, the type of letter when you read it and you think, you just know this person has written the same letter and sent it to hundreds of people, but newsflash, it doesn't work. And agents are people, editors are people. They like to feel special too. So if you can make them feel special, they will be very happy as well. I think the thing to remember, which is not meant to scare you, but you know, you only have one shot to impress an agent or an editor. It's so important not to F it up with, you know, not taking care of these tiny little details, because they always say the devil is in the details. I mean, one of the things that really bugs me is when we get a writer who submits stuff and you ask them for more information, and you know, you ask them to describe their work in just a little more detail, and they say things like, I can't describe my work, it's just unique. And I'm like, oh boy, of course it's unique. We are all unique human beings. But I need you to put your thinking cap on and think about how to sell your work to me so that I can then try and sell it to other people. You know, we have to work with each other. So that's my rant for the afternoon, Shivani. I think it is time for questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Roz. That was just wonderfully informative, and I think it's definitely given us a good glimpse into the world of publishing and your journey as well, and what we may do, if we are interested in publishing, both internationally and in Malaysia. So I think you've covered some really good ground in 35 minutes. So that's very impressive.
Thank you.
Very impressive. I have about 10 million questions, but I am not going to, I have to be selfless, as a teacher and all of that. So I will wait till the end to ask my questions. So I'm going to open up the floor to anyone. If you have a question, in fact, we already have one question here. Nadira has, I think it's Nadira. Is it Nadira from, hi Nadira, lovely to see you. Nadira was a student here, graduated last year. So we've seen lots of hands going up. Okay, fantastic. But Nadira asked, sorry, what was the name of the yearbook?
The Writer and Artist's Yearbook.
You can get it in Kinokuniya. I have seen, in fact, that's why I got my copy. That was some years ago, though.
Yeah. They do come up with a new issue every year.
All right, so we have Isaac, who put his hand up first. Okay, go ahead, Isaac.
Hello, Miss Rosalind. Thank you for that amazing talk. I have several questions, but I'm just going to ask one now.
Okay.
Like in relation to Malaysian writers who wish to work in the UK or the US, and I say work because I feel like, based on my impression of what you just said, writing seems particularly difficult to break through for a Malaysian writer. So suppose if a Malaysian writer wants to get published there, what is that edge that they need to have? And if writing is so difficult, then what other industries are possible for us, like as other options? Like, do we become agents ourselves? Do we become editors instead of writers?
Gosh, okay, thanks, Isaac. That's a very sort of deep question. In fact, there are many parts to your question. The first thing you brought up was that I had mentioned that it was difficult for Malaysians to become published. I don't believe that for a second. No, I think there's plenty of talent in Malaysia. I think the challenge is for anyone to get published in the UK and US, not just Malaysians. I think if anything, this is a good time for Malaysians to really start submitting, just because there's so much discussion in the industry. When I say in the industry, I mean in the UK and the US, about diversity, or rather the lack of diversity in publishing. And this is something that's absolutely quite shocking. I think statistics published, I can't remember where I saw them, but it was something like 95% of authors published in the last 40 years in the UK and the US were white. I mean, gosh, I think there's a lot of space for us as Malaysians to really start to take over a bit more space. And does this answer the first part of your question, Isaac?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So then you said, if it's so difficult, what can we do as writers? First of all, this is going to be a horrible truth now. I hope nobody leaves this seminar crying afterwards. It is virtually impossible to make a living as a writer. And the sooner you know this up front, the better. Unless we're talking, you're a writer in the league of J.K. Rowling and all the big names. I mean, only these guys make money. And I'm talking serious money. Everybody else has a side job. They have a side job and writing is a passion. If you're serious about a career in writing books is not the way to go. I would suggest you go into advertising, journalism. I mean, there are plenty of marketing jobs and new media jobs where writing is required. But to actually make a living writing books, especially fiction or poetry, I think that is, that's not going to happen.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you,
Your questions, Isaac.
Yeah, I'll just have to process it for a while. Thank you, Ms. Rosalind.
No worries, Isaac.
Okay, thank you, Isaac and Roz. Sarah has a question.
Yes. So I've never really thought about becoming a literary agent after hearing this talk. I'm thinking, so what did you need to become a literary agent? Do you need to take a course, or do you just work a lot and then they choose you? Is there a master's for it?
No. This is not something one learns. Not something one learns in university. Basically, most of the literary agents I know have come from publishing. They have a publishing background of some sort. Most of them would have been editors. A lot could have also come from sales or international rights, as I did. It is very unusual. It would be very unusual and / difficult to get a job as a literary agent's assistant straight away without some sort of publishing background. I mean, it's not unheard of, but again, there's so few positions, and it is such a competitive industry, and everybody wants to go, they want to get their foot in the door. So I think if you are serious about this, the best route in is through publishing.
Yeah, but everyone says it's difficult to get into publishing too.
Yeah, but I suppose it depends where you're thinking of working. I mean, would you be thinking of working in London or New York? I mean, again, there are other cities in the world. Again, this is a fallacy that all publishing companies are based in London. There are lots of brilliant publishers in Manchester, Liverpool, Edinburgh, just as there are lots of different publishing companies throughout Malaysia as well, and all parts of the world. And I think, again, this is a bit of what's that term I'm looking for? When people in the capital city sort of look down at those in secondary cities. There's a bit of snootiness, of course, but you should keep your options open.
I see. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Roz, just
Yes.
out of curiosity, if somebody has a degree in English, isn't that a good enough qualification to be a literary agent? I ask only because when I was looking around, like in those horrible days when I had spent hours looking at websites and literary agents and shortlisting and sending off all my queries and everything, I saw that quite a number of them had like degrees in English. Is that quite common?
I mean, I think in the UK it's common, and it's also not so common to take a degree in something that is going to be totally unrelated to your career. For instance, I read history, and people in Malaysia assumed that I would become a history teacher because, good grief, what else could you do with a history degree? But I think, the education system is slightly different. So, you're not sort of expected to go down a certain educational route. But having said that, work experience is so important. And again, I think your best chances are really working in the industry, getting to know that industry before sort of going down that agent's path.
All right, thanks, Roz. Okay, we have questions in the chat box. So I'm going to read them out. This one is from Jiying, JY. Any tips on coming up with comp titles while querying agents?
Sorry, any tips on
competent? Is that competent? Is that short for competent? I don't know. These days I have to catch up with all the slang and the other day I learned this from my students because I'm sad or whatever, I'm crying. So learning all these things. Anyway, so any tips on coming up with, is that competent, JY? Is that the short for competent? I'm guessing.
If I'm not mistaken, it's short for comparison.
Oh, comparison. Okay.
Okay. I think I wouldn't say I can give you any tips on this, because it's basically you would know your work best. I mean, you would know your work, and as a writer, I would also expect you to sort of read around as well. So it's really a matter of drawing on what you've read in the past, maybe talking to people as well who have actually read your work and saying to them, what does this remind you of? Does this seem like anything, Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Rosalind.
Okay, you.
Okay, our next question is from Phoebe. this is more of a question out of curiosity, but what do you think of the competition between experienced authors versus amateur budding authors in Malaysia? What is the likelihood for fresh young writers to be able to publish their work?
Again, I think to be published in Malaysia, because there are so few gatekeepers, there are more opportunities to being published in Malaysia. And I think it is so important that Malaysian writers think about being published in Malaysia before they even start being published overseas. I mean, okay, I'm not going to go into this whole, we have a duty, to Malaysian literature, etc., but we bloody do. And if our best authors keep leaving in the sense that their works are published internationally first, and then we get them back as imported books, I just feel that, the industry isn't going to go anywhere in the long run, and all our writers are just going to get poached, and I think that would be a shame. So when you say, sorry, now I've really gone off tangent. What was the question?
About local, right? So is there a difference between experienced authors versus amateur budding authors getting published in Malaysia? The likelihood for fresh young writers to be published.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, as an editor, as a commissioning editor for Clarity Publishing, we're always looking for fresh young writers. I mean, nothing gets me more excited than when we have fresh writers we've never heard of submit stuff. So, I mean, that's from my perspective. I'm not sure what it would be like in other local publishing houses, but there are not that many that publish fiction. But I suspect they are also quite excited when they receive, submissions from young up-and-coming writers, because there's nothing more exciting than seeing fresh young talent and watching it develop, and not only develop in Malaysia, but hopefully taking it overseas, taking it internationally, and showing, the world what Malaysian writers are really capable of.
I really like the trajectory you're building, Ross. It is publish locally first, and then we take it abroad.
I think it's important. Yes.
Yeah. So does that mean you're looking for manuscripts, Ross? I think we have probably at least 10 people in this call right now who have manuscripts or are thinking of.
Absolutely. Send them all in. Really, I cannot emphasize how much we need fresh blood. So please just send your stuff in. I will personally read it. You have my promise.
That's fantastic news, isn't it? I think this deserves a reaction. Yes, a reaction. So we'll give, so Ross, your email address, please do let us know as well before we end the session, so that people, be able to send you their manuscripts. And it's okay to send it to you directly, right?
Yes, it's fine. No worries.
Fantastic. Okay, we have another question. This is from Shafri. Was just wondering, is it typically recommended to have a completed book ready prior to meeting with a literary agent, or would a submission of several chapters with a clear idea on the trajectory of how the story unfolds suffice generally? And in brackets, he says, I write on the side as a hobby, but not really looking to make a career out of it.
Very sensible. That is a good question. I mean, a lot of agents will say you only need to submit an outline of your book, as well as the first 3 sort of chapters of your book. And that's fine. I mean, but I always think it's much, I don't know, I find it far more comforting to submit. If it were me submitting, I think I would be much more relaxed submitting something in the knowledge that I have my full manuscript ready. And at least if they say, yes, we're interested, could we see more? You have it there at your fingertips. And it's not going to be like, well, can I have 6 months to then churn out the rest of the book? And I think that time period where an agent shows interest to you sort of completing your book, that's kind of like the twilight zone. So maybe we want to avoid the twilight zone and, have the patience, do the work, finish what it is you need to finish, and then make your submission. I think I would go down that route.
Yeah, I would say the same as, in my experience of sending things off to agents. quite a number of them do specify that you should have your MS complete before sending the 3 chapters. So that in case they want you to read the full manuscript, they're very interested, then you have it to send. Okay.
I can write as quickly as you, Shivani.
Yeah, it's because I have a disease, you see. I must write, and I must spend at least 2 to 3 hours in the morning, get it out, and then I can be a normal person. Well, normal in brackets.
So wrong.
I don't know, in inverted commas. What is normal anyway? Okay, Isaac makes a comment here, which is interesting, just food for thought. I find it such an intriguing topic, Malaysians who wish to live and work in the West. Yes, we can think about it. Is there a question there? I'm not sure. Oh, you have your hand up, Isaac. Is that a legacy hand?
No, I actually have a new question, if that's all right.
Oh, yes.
Can I just ask you, Miss Rosalind, like, in relation to Malaysians who go to the West, like the UK, for example, and if we wish to work there, our identity as an Asian, is that something that could work to our advantage or disadvantage? Like, would that be something exciting for our employers? They look, okay, we need fresh blood, like you said, there's a lack of diversity, we need to address this. Or would it be a case where we're like kind of like at a disadvantage? We you know, how like the audience, the public, maybe they think that, oh, I'm not sure if our audience can relate to you, which is why I asked the question, like, if writing is so difficult to break through, then maybe it's more viable for Asians to work behind the scenes. Maybe they can consider become editors or publishers or agents instead. So how do we reconcile that?
I mean, it sounds like you're talking about a writing career in the UK. Am I right? And
yeah, that's one thing that I consider, but I'm also open to like other positions that are related to writing, maybe like behind the scene positions.
Right. Okay. So in terms of writing, you imagine like journalism or copywriting, or what sort of writing specifically did you have in mind?
Again, I think like I'm open to like all the options, because I realized that writing creatively may be quite difficult. As you said, like, you know, we always need a side job.
Okay. I mean, to answer your question, it basically boils down to, do I have the skills that an employer in the UK would find relevant? And I think this is something that all industries, all people looking for jobs in all different industries are going to come across. And it's going to be true for Malaysians or for, you know, anybody else who wants to work in a sort of second country, as it were. I don't know if being Malaysian is an advantage to working anywhere in the world. I mean, I can't say what the perception of Malaysians is overseas. That would be very difficult to say. All I can say is I think a potential employer would go through your CV and would pick up on interesting things that you might write in your CV. For instance, if you said something along the lines that I'm used to working in a very diverse international environment, therefore I think I would be an asset in XYZ in your company. I mean, I think that's where you're going down the route. That's what you were asking me, yes?
Yes.
Okie dokie. So yeah, I mean, I can't really answer if it's great to be a Malaysian. I mean, what I was referring to earlier was talking about potential Malaysian novelists looking to submit their work to UK and US agents. And I think we are seeing a sort of uptick in sort of young Malaysians that are being picked up by larger publishing houses. And I think the sort of discussions about diversity, having more people of color, as it were, so that it might work to our advantage.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Rosalind.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Isaac and Ros. I think also some of our writers who have been published internationally, like Tan Tuan Eng and Tash Au and Prita Samarasan, they've kind of created some kind of foundation already. There's a kind that people are aware of Malaysian writing. I think it's helpful for Malaysians who are looking to publish internationally. There's something that has been set by these writers.
Yes.
Right. Okay. We have 4 minutes left and we have one final question. And oh, Russia. Is this Russia? Our Russia from last year. I love this. I love meeting, former students who are, is that you? Yes, it's you, Russia. Okay, great. Let me read. Hi. Okay, let me read Regina's question first, and then we'll look at what Russia has shared. So Regina's question is, Ms. Rosalind, can you please provide more details of your previous job, the one about working under the international rights?
Provide more details. Okie dokie. Gosh, I feel like I'm being interviewed for a job. This was so long ago. Okay, international rights, as I said earlier before, it's a bit like international business development. I'm sure all of you travel overseas, and when you do travel overseas, I'm sure you've gone into bookshops and browsed, and you've seen books in foreign languages by maybe some of your favorite authors. And I'm sure you've picked up the books and wondered, how on earth do they get these translated? So basically, this is what my job used to be. I would sort of work with publishers from all around the world. In my case, the territories I used to look after were Eastern Europe, the Far East, meaning Japan, China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, maybe to a lesser extent, Southeast Asia. The translation market when I worked in the UK for this part of the world was not very, very huge. So basically the day-to-day aspects of the job are you have to be very familiar with all the titles that you have in your catalog. And you have, again, it's like matchmaking. You're sort of matchmaking books with publishers. So you also have to be very, very familiar with these international publishers, and you either go out and see them, or a few times a year we all meet at what are called book fairs, and the biggest book fairs are in Frankfurt, London, Bologna in Italy, if you're publishing children's books. And these are all sort of opportunities where you meet the editors or you meet the buyers, you talk about the books, you talk about sales. It's if you're interested and passionate about publishing or books, it's very interesting talking to other people, other publishers from all around the world, finding out what is hot, what's trending in their countries, and then sort of trying to link it to what you have on your own catalog and seeing if you can make that connection. So it's really about sort of, it's about building relationships in a nutshell. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you very much, Ros. We have Russia has put out an invitation here. So it's really good to hear that Russia is now a acquisition editor with Meraki Press. Meraki Press is based in KL, is it? Russia, or anyone else who knows? So she's saying that they are looking for YA or fiction this season, focus only on English language works by Asian youth. And there's a website address there and also an email address. Okay, fantastic. That's really good to hear that, Rasha. Please update me. I'd love to know what's going on, what's happening with you.
Very
capo, yeah. No, but it's lovely. It's lovely to hear what's happening with people, once they graduate. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. I just thank you so much, Ros. It's been absolutely brilliant. You've been brilliant. We've learned so much, and I think it's also very optimistic. I feel a sense of optimism, in the sense that, people may be motivated to now send their manuscripts off to you, maybe to look for agents either here. You didn't talk so much about your career as a literary agent. Maybe that's for the future. Sorry. Well, it's starting. Do you want to tell people a bit about that, Ros?
Yes, I suppose we could. I mean, since Shivani has been teasing me for the past hour about this, I shall divulge that I started a literary agency with her sister last year. So again, the idea behind the literary agency came because I noticed whenever I used to travel to book fairs as the publishing director of Clarity Publishing, I felt people didn't really take the Malaysian publisher terribly seriously. Let's not sugarcoat it, okay? I didn't feel they took they took me terribly seriously. I didn't think they took our books terribly seriously, and that really pissed me off. But I noticed the moment I said I was a literary agent, representing a whole new, fresh range of new Malaysian talent and new Malaysian voices, people in the industry started to take notice. And I thought, well, damn it, that's the only way we're going to get our books out there internationally. So this is something that we spent the last year sort of really trying to sign up new authors. Obviously, we're taking all my Clarity authors as well. We're looking for new unpublished Malaysian voices as well. And we're going to try and get them published locally, obviously, as well. But the aim is also the UK and beyond. So, so far we have done one deal. It was kind of a bittersweet deal because it happened last month when we sold translation rights for one of our books to a Ukrainian publisher. And we were all very happy, contracts all signed, and then, this has happened now. So that's going to be put on hold for the foreseeable future. But fingers crossed, life will return to normal soon.
Okay, thank you so much, Ros. I've put Ros's email address in the chat. So that we, yeah, okay, you've got that. All right. So thank you so much to Ros. We've come to the end of the session today. Before we go, let's take a photo.
No.
Is that okay? Oh, you camera shy.
I'm kidding.
Okay. Those of you who are brave, do you want to turn on your video so we can see you and we can take a nice photograph, a group photograph, to say, we've been here, we attended this talk. Lovely. Hi, Nadira. Lovely to see you. All right, Shri, JY, Evelyn, lovely. And that's Shafri. Nice to see you, Shafri. Okay, all right. Anyone else? Let's wait to see if anyone wants to pop up.
Everyone's disappeared. Towards the door.
All right. Okay, I think that's fine. Sarah, you want to take the photo? Okay.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Brilliant. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
And thank you, Shivani. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right. You're free to leap out into the sunshine, whatever that's left of the sunshine, and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Shivani. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ros. That was brilliant.
I'm happy. We will chat more, yeah?
Yes, we have a lot of things to talk about. Waiting for your feedback when you have time.
Don't worry, it'll be done. See you.
Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.